Shedeur Sanders' silence said what words couldn't. When Rex Ryan questioned his character on national TV, it wasn't just about football, it was about perception. The lazy and arrogant labels have followed black quarterbacks for decades, and Sanders knew it. That's why his decision to mime during the press conference hit harder than any speech could. It was his way of saying, I see what you're doing, and I'm not playing along. While Ryan and other commentators scrambled to interpret it, Sanders had already made his point. He wouldn't let biased narratives define him anymore.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
And that's the heart of this story. A young quarterback refusing to be boxed in by outdated stereotypes. The video makes it clear that Shedeur, guided by Deion Sanders' influence and his own resilience, isn't fighting just for himself. He's calling out a culture that still treats black athletes differently when they show confidence or individuality. His mime wasn't defiance for show. It was a protest rooted in intelligence and restraint. In exposing the media's double standards, Sanders proved that his silence was louder than any headline. Even Deion Sanders has made it clear. His son doesn't just belong in the spotlight. He's earned it. But the second Shedeur pushes back, or shows personality, or challenges a narrative, suddenly he's labeled problematic. That's not just bias. That's a system built to keep certain players in their place. What Sanders did with his mime act wasn't petty. It was poetic. A silent stand against the media's thirst for chaos. A calculated response to Rex Ryan's baseless commentary. And a message to every athlete watching. Sometimes the smartest play is refusing to play along. Rex Ryan probably thought he was delivering just another hot take when he casually accused Shedeur Sanders of looking disengaged. But what he really did was light the fuse on a conversation that had been building for months. One Shedeur answered without saying a single word. When Shedeur stepped up to the podium and refused to speak, literally miming his way through a press conference, it wasn't a meltdown. It wasn't petulance. It was calculated. Every silence, every gesture, every ounce of restraint was a direct response to the narrative being spun around him, a narrative rooted not in facts, but in stereotypes. And in doing so, Shedeur did something most athletes never dare to do. He put the media on trial and made them look at themselves. This wasn't just a moment. It was a message, one that called out the double standards, the hypocrisy, and the tired playbook that gets recycled every time a confident young black quarterback steps into the spotlight. Because let's not pretend this is new. Sports media has a long, uncomfortable history of treating black quarterbacks differently. Their leadership is questioned. Their intelligence is doubted. Their confidence is spun as ego. Shedeur is just the latest in a long line of players being forced to carry the burden of perception. And despite all that, he's shown nothing but professionalism. He's done the work. He's handled himself with composure. He's played hard, studied harder, and kept his head down while others try to knock him down. But none of that seemed to matter to voices like Rex Ryan, who looked at a sideline moment and decided to project laziness onto it. There was no film. No behind-the-scenes report. No evidence. Just an assumption. And not just any assumption. The kind that feeds off old, tired tropes. The kind that paints black quarterbacks as naturally gifted but lacking work ethic. That insinuates they don't care as much. That they're flashy but not focused. It's a narrative that lingers no matter how many times it's disproven. And this time, Shedeur chose not to engage with it all. He didn't push back with a tweet. He didn't rant in front of cameras. He went silent and let the media expose itself. The mime press conference wasn't childish. It was sharp. He knew exactly what he was doing. By choosing silence, he robbed the media of their favorite weapon, the soundbite. He refused to give them something they could twist or manipulate. And in doing so, he flipped the entire dynamic. Suddenly, it wasn't Shedeur who was being dissected. It was the people asking the questions. And they didn't like that one bit. Because once you remove the ability to misquote or misframe, what's left? A frustrated press room, unsure how to spin a story, without the athletes' cooperation. They had to sit in their discomfort. And for once, the power didn't belong to them. The media thrives on drama. They take a shrug and turn it into a scandal. They take a player sitting quietly on the bench and turn it into a character flaw. And when that player is black, it's almost always magnified. It becomes a morality tale, a referendum on leadership, a chance to recycle every stereotype that should have been buried years ago. And Shedeur knows this. He's lived this. Being Deion Sanders' son doesn't make things easier. It puts him under even more scrutiny. Every move he makes is analyzed under the weight of his father's legacy. Every mistake is treated like a scandal. Every moment of silence is interpreted as attitude. But the truth? Shedeur has shown nothing but dedication. His work ethic isn't in question, unless you're actively choosing to ignore what's in front of you. He's not lazy. He's not arrogant. He's a young man navigating immense pressure with more poise than most adults ever will. That my moment wasn't about being funny. It wasn't about disrespect. It was about control. It was about saying, I see the game you're playing, and I'm not giving you the script. And it worked. The clip went viral. People weren't laughing. They were thinking. Because when a young black athlete chooses silence, it doesn't mean he has nothing to say. It means he's already said enough. It means the burden of proof shifts to the people who've been crafting the narrative without facts. And for once, they had to sit with that. It also forced a conversation that's long overdue. The media's role in shaping how we view athletes, especially black quarterbacks. When a white quarterback throws a tantrum on the sideline, it's called passion. When a black quarterback stays calm, it's called detachment. When a white quarterback shrugs off the media, it's leadership. When Shedeur does it, it's disrespect. This isn't about one bad take. It's about a pattern, a cycle, one that damages reputations, alters careers, and reinforces biases that should have been dismantled a long time ago. And let's not pretend that media coverage exists in a vacuum. Fans absorb these narratives. Coaches hear them. Scouts hear them. Decision-makers hear them. And slowly, the noise starts to influence real outcomes. So when someone like Rex Ryan says Shedeur looked like he didn't care, that's not harmless. It's not just an opinion. It's a dog whistle. One that tells everyone watching that this player isn't worth investing in. That maybe, just maybe, he doesn't have the right attitude. And it's a lie. Because everything Shedeur has done, from his discipline on the field to his decision to remain silent at the podium, screams awareness, focus, and maturity. He's not just reacting. He's choosing his moments. He's conserving his energy for what actually matters. And in the middle of all this noise, he's found a way to rise above it without even raising his voice. That takes a different kind of strength. Because let's be honest, he could have clapped back. He could have gone viral for the wrong reasons. He could have called out Rex Ryan by name, dragged every critic, and started a media firestorm. But he didn't. He stayed calm. He chose silence. And in doing so, he exposed the agenda without feeding it. That's not immaturity. That's strategy. That's someone who understands exactly what's going on and how to navigate it. The sad part is, it even needed to happen in the first place. The fact that Shedeur's professionalism had to be proven with silence instead of being recognized through his actions tells you everything you need to know about how we treat black athletes. They're expected to work twice as hard, be twice as composed, and still get half the benefit of the doubt. But maybe that's starting to change. Because this moment, this silent protest, hit different. It challenged the idea that athletes owe the media performance. It reminded everyone that you can refuse to play the part and still win. And it showed that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing, and let the noise fall apart on its own. Shedeur Sanders isn't backing down. He's not broken. He's not lost in the controversy. He's standing exactly where he wants to be, focused, prepared, and waiting for the next chance to prove himself, on the field where the critics can't hide behind their microphones. And when that time comes, the headlines won't be about Miming. They'll be about a player who took control of his story and forced everyone else to catch up. If you've been following this and you're tired of the recycled narratives, tired of the double standards, and ready to see athletes define their own paths, drop a comment. Let's talk about it. And if you want to stay in the loop as this story unfolds, because it's definitely not over, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Because Shedeur's silence might have made headlines today, But what he does next is going to speak louder than ever. What Shedeur Sanders did wasn't just a moment. It was a turning point, a quiet detonation that forced everyone to reevaluate how the media interacts with athletes, how narratives are created, and most importantly, how power gets passed around in those rooms where the cameras are rolling and the microphones are hot. Think about it. What do you really do when a player refuses to speak? When he strips away your ability to cut up clips, edit out the nuance, and feed outrage to the algorithm? The media thrives on reactions, on emotion, on missteps. Shedeur gave them none of that. Just silence. Just pantomime. Just a firm refusal to participate in their theater. And in doing so, he broke the fourth wall. He didn't storm out. He didn't beg for understanding. He didn't defend himself. He let the absurdity speak for itself. And the room, full of reporters trained to fish for drama, was suddenly left with nothing. Just a quarterback silently gesturing his answers while the cameras kept rolling. And yet it said everything. And that right there is the part that keeps echoing. Because this wasn't just about a single press conference. This was about pulling the curtain back on an entire system that pretends to be fair, but isn't. A system that claims to be objective, but routinely paints black quarterbacks with the same outdated, coated brush. Lazy. Uncoachable. Not a leader. Shedeur's heard it all already. And the people saying it aren't exactly new faces either. It's the same recycled opinions, coming from the same circles of media insiders who still pretend they're talking X's and O's, when really, they're pushing personal discomforts masked as football takes. Let's not act like Rex Ryan's comments came from nowhere. They came from a place of learned bias, of instinctive judgment, of seeing a confident young black man on the sidelines, not jumping up and down or pandering to the cameras, and assuming disinterest, assuming laziness. As if Shedeur owes a game, or the media, a certain look, a certain tone, a certain posture. As if his quiet is somehow an indictment of his character, rather than a reflection of his professionalism. Because that's the root of it. Shedeur's silence wasn't indifference. It was refusal. He's refusing to perform for people who don't see him clearly. Refusing to be baited into a narrative that's already written. Refusing to validate a system that refuses to validate him. And let's be honest, the media didn't know what to do with that. You could feel the confusion radiating from the room when he started miming. The awkward laughs, the subtle frustration. They came in expecting another soundbite, another story to run with. Instead, they became the story. Their frustration, their confusion, their loss of control. And that loss of control, that's what stung the most. Because the media likes to think they're in charge, that they get to shape the story. But Shedeur flipped that dynamic with nothing more than silence. That's what makes this moment so rare, so bold, and frankly, so necessary. It put the spotlight back where it belongs, not on personality, but on patterns. Patterns of unfair coverage. Patterns of racial stereotyping. Patterns of cherry-picking criticism when it suits a particular narrative. Shedeur wasn't just calling out the media. He was calling out the cycle. The cycle where white quarterbacks are praised for swagger, while black quarterbacks are penalized for ego. Where the same sideline body language that gets called focused for one player is labeled checked out for another. Where commentary isn't analysis, it's projection. This is the same media machine that rewards spectacle, that punishes players for being human, and strips them of context the second it makes for a better story. And Shedeur Sanders said no. Not with a tweet, not with a tantrum, but with mime. And let's not get it twisted. This wasn't about being cute. It wasn't for show. It was a calculated decision. One rooted in awareness. One that said, I know what this room is. I know what this moment is. And I'm not giving you what you want. That's not immaturity. That's power. And power like that is disruptive. Because it forces everyone to stop and think. Why do we expect certain athletes to speak a certain way? Why do we take the smallest gestures from some players and explode them into character judgments, while others get a pass? The answer is simple. The expectations are not equal, and they've never been. Shedeur Sanders isn't just playing quarterback. He's navigating a minefield of perception. Every move is monitored, every expression analyzed, every silence weaponized. And somehow, Through all of that, he's still finding ways to stay focused, stay sharp, and most importantly, stay true to himself. That's the part that deserves recognition. Because let's be honest, lesser minds would have folded by now. They would have snapped, clapped back, played into the very trap laid for them. But Shedeur didn't. He chose control. He chose composure. He chose to play his game, not theirs. And in the end, that's what makes this so significant. Because we talk a lot about resilience in sports, about mental toughness, about leadership. And here's a quarterback showing all three in the face of lazy critiques and coded language. And somehow, he's the one being questioned? What are we even doing? We can't keep pretending the media doesn't have power. We can't keep acting like these narratives don't shape careers, reputations, futures. When someone like Rex Ryan says Shedeur doesn't look engaged, that has ripple effects. That spreads. That seeds doubt. And when that doubt is rooted in bias, it becomes a quiet form of sabotage. But not this time. Because this time, Shedeur met bias with silence, met distortion with calm, met noise with clarity. And in doing so, he didn't just hold his ground. He changed the conversation. Now, we're not talking about lazy sideline critiques. We're talking about media responsibility, about racial double standards, about how silence, when used right, can be the loudest protest of all. And that's what people are going to remember, not the accusations, not the lazy takes, but the press conference where the quarterback didn't say a word and still said more than anyone else in the room. Because moments like this stick. They mark a shift. They plant seeds. Seeds that say, you don't get to define me. You don't get to build your brand off my silence. And you definitely don't get to spin your bias as expertise. That's where we are now. The media is on notice. The script has been flipped. And Shedeur, he's just getting started. Because the next time he speaks, whether with his voice or with his game, it's going to land differently. It's going to carry the weight of everything he's already proven through his restraint, through his patience, through his refusal to play along. And when that moment comes, no headline can contain it. What Shedeur Sanders did wasn't just about the media room. It wasn't only about Rex Ryan or a couple of analysts lobbing lazy criticisms. It was about legacy. It was about coded expectations. It was about reclaiming narrative in a space that has never been built to tell your story truthfully. There's always been an unspoken rule in sports media. Black quarterbacks must be extraordinary and humble, confident but never too loud, talented but never too proud. It's a performance of acceptability. You don't just have to play the game. You have to play the role. And the moment you step out of line, the moment you push back or show too much autonomy, they come for your character. And that's what Shedeur exposed. In real time, with a raised eyebrow and a few silent gestures. He turned the whole machine against itself. By saying nothing, he forced the media to talk about their own tactics, about why they're so comfortable framing athletes through bias, about how criticism becomes character assassination when race and perception get mixed in. Let's not sugarcoat it. Shedeur's My Moment made a lot of people uncomfortable because it poked at the idea that athletes are supposed to be grateful for media attention, that they're supposed to sit still, smile, and answer questions, even when those questions are rooted in nonsense. But here's the thing. Just because you can speak doesn't mean you have to, especially not when your words are going to be twisted before they even hit the airwaves. So Shedeur didn't take the bait. He did something smarter. He let the media reveal itself. And it worked, because in that silence, everything became clear. The same media members who say they just call it like they see it were suddenly grasping for meaning. The ones who pride themselves on decoding locker room culture couldn't decode a mime. They were left flailing, and in that flailing, they prove his point. They don't actually see Shedeur. They don't want to. They want the version of him that fits the narrative. And when he refused to give it to them, the discomfort became the story. This wasn't a distraction. This was strategy. Shedeur is playing the long game. He's not interested in winning a 24-hour news cycle. He's interested in winning on the field and controlling his image off of it. And in 2025, that's what real power looks like. Not clapping back, not fighting every critic, but choosing when and how to engage. And on your terms. He's not just reacting. He's leading without a helmet, without a huddle, without saying a word. That's the kind of leadership that can't be taught. It's earned. It's lived. It's watching your name get dragged on national TV and choosing to respond with poise, with control, with a performance so quiet, it's silence and noise. And the thing is, this story is far from over. Shedeur's career is still unfolding. And the media, they're going to keep watching. But now, they'll think twice before assigning character flaws based on optics. Because the next time they try to twist a gesture or a tone or look into some larger personality flaw, they'll remember the mime. They'll remember the silence. And they'll remember how foolish it made them look. Because here's the truth. They underestimated him. They mistook quiet for weakness. They saw stillness and assumed surrender. They saw calm and called it disengagement. But what they didn't see, what they refuse to see, is the discipline it takes to stay composed when every camera is pointed at you, waiting for a mistake. The mental toughness required to play at a high level and carry the weight of a media machine that's itching to turn you into a controversy. They saw a quarterback. They forgot they were looking at a tactician. So now, the ball is in their court. Shedeur's already shown that he's aware, intentional, and unbothered. He knows how this game works, and he's 2 steps ahead. The question now is, will the media catch up? And more importantly, will the people watching, the fans, the scouts, the decision-makers, see through the noise and recognize what's really happening? Because if they do, Shedeur's story won't just be a sports story. It'll be a blueprint for how to navigate media pressure, for how to confront bias without losing your cool, for how to turn silence into a spotlight. And when that spotlight hits him again, whether it's in a starting role, a playoff game, or another press conference, it won't be about proving anything to the people who doubted him. It'll be about reminding everyone why they should have seen it all along. If you're seeing it now, speak up, drop a comment. Let your voice be part of the conversation. And if you're done letting lazy narratives run unchecked, hit that subscribe button, because the story isn't over, and Shedeur's not done talking. He's just choosing when to speak. And trust, when he does, it's going to be undeniable.